Good morning, everyone. I hope you are well. And I wanted to pop in with this week's archetype session, or like an archetype exploration of the week. There's been a lot of interesting things going on the last few weeks, and we're seeing a lot of things unfold at the moment. And it's interesting, two of the cards that have come up. And I'm going to talk about the artist archetype. So the artist archetype and the judge archetype, and how the artist archetype can impact your spiritual business, and the judge archetype. So let's look at the artist archetype first and explore, what the artist archetype represents as a persona, and what the artist archetype represents in a business. Okay. So the artist archetype, for example, in personal, when you are identifying your personal archetype, I do a lot of work with archetypes, and in my Magic of Archetype course, I help students explore their superpowers in relation to their strongest power archetypes, right? And what that does is help the person unlock more about themselves, what they're here to do, what their purpose is, their mission, because when we understand what our personal power is and our personal traits and who we truly are at our core, right? And I don't mean, we're all at our core, we've got that, that we're that God spark or God, but what I mean is we're all different flavors, and we're all different essences, and we're all different parts of the jigsaw, right? So we all have come in with different roles, and sometimes, someone that's looking outside of our industry may look that, if you're a healer, you're here to heal in some ways. It's as if we're all in one category, but the reality is we're all very, very different. We're all very, very unique, and it doesn't even matter if you've got the same modality as someone. Your purpose can completely be different. Your audience will be different. All the other things that shape you make you different. So someone who's a typical the artist as their main archetype, the power archetype, is often the artist, and we combine it in a kind of generic form, and we combine it with the creator. Now, you can split them into like subset archetypes, but that can get a bit complex. But for simplicity at the moment, in this card, we're representing the artist and the creator. Now, everyone has the artist and the creator within them. We all have artistic and creative channels. We may not always see it, identify with it, but we do have. But people that have that as a strong part of their archetype can often find it very easy to create, right? And create new things. I am a strong creator. It's usually in my top 3 in my business, and also in my persona, right? And that can be a great thing, because I find it very easy to channel and create and come up with ideas. The only thing is, I'm so creative that I have to be able to discern what is coming through, right? Because when I have so much information and so many ideas, it's discerning what is just information and ideas and triggers of all sorts of things, and what's actually coming through in a soul, less ego, less just stimulation, and what's actually coming on a real high spiritual level. And this way I could explain it is that many times, when people explore spirituality, and particularly those of you who delve into people who delve into things like the New Age, sometimes you can delve into a lot of things you don't know what you're dealing with, and delve into things that are not always of the light. And get involved with different things where you maybe don't have the full understanding and maybe see things. So what happened that can make us be a channel, and we're all open to all sorts of interferences in our energy, right? But when you're very creative and your channel is very open to the flow, you can also be very open to other things that can influence your creative flow, right? And it's the mind being distracted. It can be maybe our own neuroticism. If a lot of creatives can be quite neurotic, or even sometimes narcissistic tendencies sometimes as well, depends. And what I mean is that there can be dependence. So I want you to think about someone who is like the starving artist. And if you think of people like Michelangelo and people who were great artists, but it would appear they had a lot of dark night of the soul, and maybe suffered what appeared to be a lot of mental health challenges. And sometimes it can be a lot of introspection and isolation if the artist moves into the shadow element. It can be more in their head rather than being a clear channel, right? And can be easily kind of, creatives tend to be, and artists tend to be very sensitive and empathic, and they can be more sensitive to all sorts of things. And, you know, when they're not addressing their own wounding, it makes them even more open to all sorts of things. So the thing about the artist and the creative is a powerful archetype. And it's a powerful archetype to be able to tap into your business. And we all need, as a spiritual business, particularly today when we are having to be visible online in a creative way. It's not like the people are meeting you at an event, you know, you're actually online and you're trying to kind of stand out. And when we have the ability to use a creative flow in our branding and marketing in an authentic way, and understand how to use it in an authentic way, and how to use it in a way that captures your energy of your business, it can be really powerful. People get stuck in this aspect who feel they are not strong creators. They get really stuck with the artistic and creative aspect of making their market and their business more creative, right? Creators don't have a problem with that. Sometimes they have so many ideas, and also they can get stuck into this. They just want to do things for fun and to be in the creative process. Guess what? There's an imbalance in relation to their business. They just want to do the fun things, but they don't want to do the serious things. And I'll give you some examples. Through the years, I've hired different people to help me with my business. And one of the common things, I got a lot of people want to do all the graphics and do all these kind of creative things, or like fun, and a lot of them would say, oh, I was like playing, right? But a lot of them weren't that good at it, or they weren't great at time management. It took them ages to do it. So they weren't really skilled in that area. But it brought the inner child in them. So they just wanted to do that. And people can often in business we all want to sometimes do the things that are fun, but we can struggle with doing the things that actually make it a business, right? So the artist aspect is the two sides of that: the creative flow, the channeling, the positive, the newness, the ability to bring ideas through and create them and transfer them. But there's also the fall through, right? So it's like the artist that starts painting and never finishes. It doesn't think it's perfect, or doesn't then bring it out to an audience, right? Or who are so embodied in just the creative process, right, that they don't contribute to the world. It's more about they're sharing it all for themselves, or they have something else going on mentally and emotionally, or even spiritually, and they are being very introverted and hiding things, right? Or not being honest with themselves in relation to, it's like almost getting that balance where in life you have to share your gifts. You have to be willing to put it out there, right? And you also have to be willing, it's like the adult, I talk about this a lot. It's like sometimes when inner child comes in, the inner child doesn't want to take self-responsibility. They can want to do all the fun things, but they don't always want to do the serious things or take self-responsibility. And sometimes we see that in the artist and the creator where they fall into the victim, the negative aspect of the artist or creative archetype, can expect other people to, how could you say, support them. Okay, they maybe don't take financial responsibility. That could be a partner, it could be parents, it could be the system. It could be also a sense of entitlement and expectation that they should be able to do their art and create things, so there can be a build-up, resentment, frustration, anger, and a mixture of energy. The opposite side of that is the creative flow of being so in the flow and sharing that creativity, expressing that creativity, that you bring that abundance back because you're sharing it from such a free space, a heart space, that you're giving that and you're sharing, and it's like a constant, it's that giving. So it's like, you know, if you think about the figure 8 and infinity, so I always think of infinity, the infinity sign, as giving out energy and bringing it back, giving out the energy and bringing it back. So the infinity, if you think about that, and very much it's the creative process of the flow and everything coming back and doing it in a nice, you know, it's not a straight line. The creative process is never a straight line. And when you can tap into the artist and the creator in your business, the light aspect of that, it gives you, it helps move a lot of stagnant energy. And the creative process is a great way to tap into, if you can tap into what I call the divine and the soul and the higher dimensions, you can really tap into such a power there, and the creative flow comes through you. It's just, it can be very easy. Sometimes the artist and the creative can be very in their mind and spend a lot of time in introversion and on their own, that there can be a lot of darker stagnant energy or lots of different other things. Also, if there's other things going on, you know, with the wounding. So if you feel as if, for example, your creative aspects in your business, right, no matter if you're an artist or creator archetype or if that's part of your business, it doesn't matter. But if you feel in any way that your creativity is stifled and you don't feel you're a creative person, or that you find it hard to be creative in your business, there's often a disconnection from your intuition, a disconnection from spirit, from God. It's like there's not a free flow and there's lack of trust. Also, it can be, of course, that there is a disconnection from the inner child as well. Or it can be that you maybe, you know, obviously associations and things with creativity being part of work, and that can be the opposite side of that, where people associate the creative and artistic process as not work, right? So there's two sides of that, two sides of the coin, where if you believe you've had, you know, been brought up in a situation where maybe your parents, for example, did not value your artistic or creative gifts and said, that's not a job. I remember when I went to music college, I first started when I left school, it was a design and fashion type course. And I found it really easy because as a child, from a child, my mum taught me how to sew, and I was a dressmaker from a young age. I was making coats as a teenager for myself. So I was quite highly skilled in that area from a young age. And then I went to college, and I remember getting bullied at college, and I was the youngest in the class. I was a very, very naive 17-year-old. I had just turned 17. And I was in a college where many of the students were a lot older than me, and let's put it this way, a lot worldly wise. And I got kind of It was like, someone's a friend of mine said the word yesterday about someone, I was a snowflake in that way, and I just couldn't. It was like shell shock. I was also brought up in, I suppose, in a naive environment, and I went in and I was very creative, and I was more skilled than anyone in the course on one level, on the respect, and being able to do I don't mean the artist aspect, but actually being able to create and tailor a coat. So there was me, and they were, it was great because you were learning other types of ways of doing things. But I remember getting a lot of resentment from older students, because there was me being able to do lots of things that they were just learning. And I didn't recognize that at the time. I just found it really hard. I ended up leaving after the first year. It was just so overwhelming for me. It was supposed to be a 2 to 3 years course. And I was lucky in one hand that I had from a young age been encouraged to be creative. So that never hindered me, but it was quite hard. But I remember then going to music, and I also was around a lot of people that were very artistic. But I saw a lot of sides where a lot of neuroticism, perfectionism, which can fall in with creativity, and then the opposite side where there can be, and I don't mean, and maybe is lazy. It's almost like you just want to play it, you want to create, but you don't want to actually do something constructive. So it's like that. There's the two polar opposites, but it's always worth exploring in your business. What's going on? Is it you're struggling to channel? Is it you creative as a blocks there? And I do I'm going to be changing how I do things, but I still do offer, it's a 1-to-1 session where it's called Explore Your Magical Child, which explores the creative child and the magical side, and I use different things to clear anything that might be blocking you, right? And that's quite useful. I just forgot about that. So, but one of the things that the artist and the creator, the power in the artist and the creative at the moment is the artist and the creator is also the innovator, right? The designer, the person that comes up with new ideas, new concepts, new solutions, right? And we're in a situation in the world that the old structures are breaking down. People are waking up. People are opening their eyes, and they're not hiding as much. They recognize that they have to start being grown up and wake up. So they can't be that child that doesn't want to see and doesn't want to look. And they recognize that at a core level, we all recognize we don't want to live in the world that we're living in. We know that we deserve more. We know that our children deserve more. We know that in many ways, there's a lot of things in the world that we need more, how could you say, creative solutions instead of destructive solutions, instead of power controlled solutions. We need more solutions that are moving into 5D and above. And that's where the artist and the creator aspect of us all is such an important aspect. The more that we can tap into that, because we have been so conditioned in the 3D to look at things from a very narrow, limited perspective, that we can fall into hopelessness, we can fall into negativity and all these things. Oh no, there's no solution, and not see possibilities. I know one of the things that people used to comment to me, they used to say to me, Eileen, how do you always bounce back? I remember my mum saying to me one time in my life, I was going through a really tough time and I just felt broken at the time. And I remember my mum saying to me, Eileen, I've got 9 daughters, well, 7 daughters and 2, brothers. But my God, Eileen, you're the only one out of them that always, it's like she said, I was like the phoenix, and the phoenix that always reinvented myself. So if something didn't work, I would suddenly create something new. If something didn't work, and it was like, sometimes when I was younger, it was like fashion statement. One time I would be like, punk. right? And then it was like another look. I had the Madonna look, at the punk look, and I would go through all these phases where I would reinvent myself, right? And I learned that the reinvention of the exterior and all that is superficial, and it's not getting to the core, and you learn more. But on a level, that's the creative part of me. That was that coming through, the ability to transmute through certain situations and transform into different ways of being to move forward. And that's what helps the human race survive. That's what helps us pivot forward and create great change. So those of you, because I know I attract a lot in the group as creatives and artists, those of you that have that in you, and it doesn't mean that you physically have to like create art and draw and paint, doesn't mean that some of you do that. But the artist and the creative can come in different ways. I've got a sister who she was a designer, but she created like models of things, and she come up with concepts for companies and things. So it comes through in all different ways, the creative and the artist, right? But some people are like more creative coaches. They can think of more solution-based ways of doing it. So the more that you can create into your creative and artistic channel, it gets you looking at solution-focused, for, you know, you're more solution focused in relation to your problem, rather than someone that always just be victim and put me. You see solutions and you look for solutions, right? And this is where it's interesting. Another card to come up was the judge archetype, right? Now I have to be honest, there's a bit of me that is can be really judgmental about things. I can, right? And I would say I'm like the judging mother sometimes, right? And I'm more judge and critical, first of all, for myself, right? Very, very judging. And I was brought up, I'm going to a very strict Catholic, so it was, everything was like, yo, you don't do that, and everything's a bit self-sacrifice and whatever, and sometimes quite staunch, right? So there is a bit of that in me. But the judgment card coming up at the moment is, as if we think about discernment, first of all, so because that's a subject that feels still really important at the moment. Discernment is the ability to be able to judge situations wisely, into the ability to discern truth, right? And discern what may or may not be true. Now, at the moment, it can be very challenging to know exactly what is the truth. We can know some things that are definitely not the truth, and we feel it's not the truth. And we know there's something else, and there's some layers to things. But even in the spiritual community, there's lots of different opinions of what is the total truth. And on one hand, I believe that in this earth, in our lifetime, I don't think we're ever going to see the complete 100% truth and maybe reach the enlightenment that people think. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But what I mean is, there's a whole universe out there, and there's so many different layers. And even in archetypes, an archetype represents how you show up in the world, represents how you see the world, but also that means that you have a different part to play. So it can to do with identity in many ways as well. And when we have a certain identity or a certain way of being, we see the world through our eyes, and we almost play in the world like a child. We play that role in a certain way because we see it. So we judge and we see things from a certain perspective, right? And good judgment and discernment is vital if you're running a spiritual business, because you have to constantly have the ability to discern within yourself and have good judgment and know, and you know, and sometimes that's evolving as a person and maturing, and it's moving from being the child to the adult and taking mature responsibility and recognizing when you have made mistakes or your own triggers or awareness. There's certain that aspect, but it's also judgment about making decisions. And I have to be honest, I can sometimes go in the based way, and I'll explain why. And so I'm very, I invest a lot, I invest very, very highly in my, like, getting spiritual teachers, getting help, you know, coach, different things to do for my involvement, because I believe that if I'm helping other people and I'm helping them move forward, I need to be completely committed and valued to do the best for me, to work in all the areas that I can, because I just feel that I'm not if I am not doing that work, it's not fair to my audience. So when people are paying for me, they're paying also for all that work that I do in myself. But the reality is, I know for me, I am quite cautious now of who I invest in. I'm very choosy what I invest in. And I often like to ask a lot of questions and know things on a lot deeper level for a lot of reasons, because I've learned to be more discerning, because I've had so many experiences. And as you get older, and I suppose in this work, you see things probably very differently from maybe what you did at the beginning. I was, like many people, very naive, saw things from a very small perspective. It was like almost you're only seeing it's like almost you're looking at the world and you're sitting in this tiny country and you only see things from that perspective, but there's a whole big world out there and there's new levels of learning. So I have to be careful, because I can be quite judgmental about certain things, especially in the spiritual community, when lots of things are sold that are spiritual, but underneath there's not really spiritual. It's just about people making money and making a living. That for me I find really hard. But this is a bit as reminding ourselves about compassion. First of all, self-compassion, because the inner critic, the inner judge, we can all be really hard on ourselves of things that we've maybe not done, that we wish we had done in a different way, or a better way, or a more healthier way, or choices we made, things we regret or we wish we had done. There's that part, but there's also the judgment part of looking at the world, the way that we judge what's going on, the way that we judge other people around us and judge that. There has to be that balance. But the balance is part of it. So in a business, you have to have judgment, the positive aspect. You have to be able to make healthy decisions. And the judge, if you think about the judge and the balance and scales, right, the ability to be able to weigh things up is so important. And the weighing up involves action and the ability then not, so it's like sometimes we need to act, sometimes we don't, right? And that's sometimes you have to do, and sometimes there's times when you've just to let things, grow and naturally come in its own process. And that is part of the judge archetype. Now, for example, like the rebel archetype, archetype is a persona. That individual who's very identified with the rebel archetype is the type of archetype, or the type of what you would call persona, who can really struggle with rules, guidelines, boundaries, right? And they could struggle with people, even like me, someone who's all about safe, effective practice, and I do things a certain way, right? Now, because at the opposite end of the scale, they want to break everything, right? They want to break things, and things sometimes should be broken down and, how could you say, reconstructed or allowed to have more freedom. But also, I suppose there's certain things, if we had no rules, guidelines, or we had no parallels, you can imagine. And if you had no rules within a business and you had no boundaries within a business, right, you wouldn't have a business, right? So what can happen, for example, if someone has a strong rebel archetype within them? Their business has no structure, right? Because they want to have no rules and they want to do it their own way, but they don't want to do anything that's tried and tested. And sometimes the rebel archetype and its shadow element is like the little child that just wants to do everything their own way, no matter what chaos And it can be what they call the rebel without a cause, the rebel without a clue. So that's the shadow element. The power aspect of the rebel is the ability to break down rules that don't work, the ability to be able to break free from things. And that's a really important archetype that's coming. But the reality in a business and in your life, we have to have discernment and judgment, right? There has to be that ability, because if you don't see where you, so for example, I'm always about safe and effective practice all the time, right? Just because I see a lot of naivety, particularly people in the early stages of their work. And lots of people, when they come into therapy and healing and coaching, do courses, but they don't always, the way they're taught, they don't think about what situations that might be harmful for. And unfortunately, I had a lot of horrible situations, but I also had used to get lots of clients who went to so many people where they were more harmed, or their money was taken off them. And what the things that they were going for were never going to be the things that would help them, but the therapists didn't tell them that. So I'm very much with safe, effective practice and a lot of things like that. But the reality is that if we don't, in a business, if we're not doing safe, effective practice, if we're not clear and we don't have boundaries, like you're not my type of client, this type of thing, knowing you're not my client because maybe I can't help you as best I could the rest. So would it be fair me taking the money? That type of thing, knowing the boundaries of who your clients are, who you're not clients, and what you do and you don't do. One of the hardest challenges, as I talk about a lot in my business, was having boundaries and being able to say no, and recognizing that I can't do it all and that some things are not healthy. And one of those things is actually sometimes groups, I've found this in the past, easily burnt out, easily scatter my energy, and also not, for a lot of reasons, just not fit for some of the styles of work that I do. And it's one of the reasons why, again, and I don't mean just all groups, particular styles of group, with the way Facebook works and things like that. It's another reason why I'm going to be moving. There's some things I'm just tweaking at the moment, but I'm going to be moving my Spiritual Marketing Club membership. So it'll be a membership. And it's all moved over to the community. And there will be weekly sessions, but it will be there'll be different levels like what I already have, but it's like a paid. And there's reasons. It's because I realised that my business, well, I've known this before, but sometimes we kind of try things again to see if it'll work, or for whatever reason, if we're guided to do. But I had to realise that my business has to work. A reminder, your business is to work for you. There's lots of coaches and things will tell you ways to build your business, right? But if it's not aligned with you as a person, excuse me. If it's not aligned with you as a person and it's not aligned with your business, it's not going to work, right? So that's why good judgment is really, really important. But I'm going to leave it for there. So again, remember, the artist and the judge, is it coming out positive in your business at the moment, or is the shadow element, excuse me, is the shadow element showing up? Okay. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye for now.